Good evening, I'm Kristi K. To know me is to know I'm a bit of a night owl. And for me, that's when the fun and the real and the compelling conversations can truly take a deeper, even more personal tone. And on Kristi K is After Hours, anything goes. It's an excellent time to talk issues and solutions, to assess, commiserate, and analyze how things are going in life. So, as we're together tonight on After Hours, we're going to talk about relationships, a popular topic. So many tentacles. And as much as I love talking about what works and what doesn't, what's healthy and what isn't, tonight's convo is truly different. Why do some relationships start out so strong, at least appearing as such, and then turn so very toxic? How do secrets and guilt and shame cause some fun, loving, and confident women possibly their lives? This is an After Hours exclusive, and folks, this one is powerful beyond measure. With me is the incredible New York Times bestselling author, writer, advocate for survivors of domestic violence, a trainer on sexual assault, and so much more. I am thrilled to have Janine Latus with me tonight here on Kristi K is After Hours. Janine, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Kristi. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Same here. And let's just dive in. Since it's After Hours, anything goes. Right. So listen, I have heard your TED Talks. I've watched your speeches. I have followed you online. You are such a strong and confident woman, and I'm so smart. Tell me about you as a little girl. What were you like? Okay, let's see. When I was a child, I was strong and determined and really annoying to my parents, of course, because strong, determined children often are. But I was raised in a household where my father had this thing where he felt it was fair to say, for example, that my chest is so flat you could iron clothes on it. Or, your feet are so big it's amazing you don't quack when you walk. And it's just like when you say to a kid, you're not cold, you're not hungry, you're exaggerating. Or like when my father would tickle us until we cried. So we learned that we didn't have any autonomy over our body. We didn't have any right to say no, especially to a larger man. And that had consequences for our entire lives.
And you grew up with sisters, correct?
I did. It was quite the household. 1 brother, 3 sisters.
So there was a lot of activity going on, a lot of moods when you're growing up. Well, how was your relationship with your sisters?
Oh, my sisters and I are really close. We're actually navigating moving my mother to memory care. So we're obviously very close right now.
That's a tough time in your life right now. For sure. So as your relationships kind of moved forward, you went through high school. How did that evolve for each of you?
All right. So for me, I left home. I left home while I was still in high school because of my father's behavior and because of his handsiness. And so I became independent while still in high school and did all the hard work of working a couple of jobs and hitchhiking to school and all this stuff. And my sisters scattered. My brother scattered. We all just got as far away from the nuclear family as we can get. We're all over the country now.
Was your mother in the picture in a big way when you were growing up?
Oh gosh, my mother was one of those housewives who were stuck, She couldn't get a credit card in her own name. She couldn't get a mortgage in her own name. She couldn't get a job without my dad's permission because she had 5 kids at home. And I remember the day that she announced at the dinner table that she had taken a job. And right before she told everybody, and we're talking about the 1970s, and you got the whole family down the table like this, and the Vietnam War is on TV. And my mom said, well, I have an announcement to make. And she burst into hives and told my dad that she had gotten a job. And he went, you better not let anything around this house slip. But she also had to have a job because our family needed money. But also, she gets to be the competent person she is and go out into the workplace and make money. It's something we take for granted now, but the generation that precedes mine, they did not have that option. Yeah. My mom did her best. She was fighting society and Catholicism and my dad, not physically fighting my dad, but just pushing against all the crap he was doing. So yeah, my mom did her best.
Well, and these are the memories that you'll never forget. And you're really vividly portraying those to us all right now, what you remember about those conversations. And so from a relationship standpoint, as much as we like to talk about positive and healthy relationships in life and here on After Hours, it's also really important to start taking a deeper look at some of those more toxic relationships that occur in our lives and really bring us to where we are today sometimes.
Right.
I do have a date I want to ask you about. It is May the 4th of 2002. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, of course it does. So that was, okay. So backing up a little bit, I had been in a physically abusive relationship in college, and I had my face broken and some ribs. And one of the men who helped me get out of that situation eventually became my husband. But when you grand allemande right and left through dysfunctional relationships, and you don't take time to center yourself and make yourself really healthy in between, then you are going to attract somebody who wants the desperate version of you. Whereas if you are centered, healthy, happy, and whole, the person who wants you wants somebody who's centered, healthy, happy, and whole. And so I was desperate, and I attracted somebody who wanted to have power over a desperate person. And we were married and we had children, and it was often quite lovely. And then it wasn't, as his behavior became increasingly controlling and jealous. You know, I frequently ask audiences, you know, where's the line between sweet romantic jealousy and controlling behavior? Because you got to figure it out. Sometimes it's flattering to have somebody jealous when you talk to somebody else. But other times they are controlling who you get to associate with. And abusers do that. They isolate their victims. And so May 4th, 2002 was the day that my husband left. And I had a big house, and I'm self-employed, a little kid at the time, and I'm terrified. And I'm free. And Amy, my sister, was one of my primary supports during that time.
What was Amy up to those days? How was she doing like that?
Amy had met her cowboy. My sister Amy had been so out of shape that walking across the street would have winded her. And in the preceding years, she had lost 85 pounds. She had lost 85 pounds, and she came to hike Chimney Rock with me in North Carolina, which is like this. And I could barely keep up with her. I mean, it was glorious. She also had gotten her employer, the Kimberly-Clark Corporation, ironically, they make Kleenex, to move her job from Atlanta, where she'd worked for a long time, to Knoxville, because Amy had been accepted into the graduate studies program in religious studies at the University of Tennessee. So they moved her job for her, and then she applied for and got a mortgage in her own name, and then she met her cowboy. And I'm talking full on, you know, cowboy hat, cowboy boots, rodeo belt buckle, big gold chain around his neck with a cross. I mean, the whole buy it on Amazon rodeo version of a human being. And Amy was happy. So that's what was going on while she was helping to carry me out of my marriage.
So she was really your biggest support system, listening to what you were going through.
She was certainly among them. And she took those, you know, those snotty phone calls that are gross and you don't want to take them, but she took them over and over and over again. I mean, an outstanding support going through that hard time. And I talked to her at least every day, you know, and most of the time it was about movies, because she was an absolute expert on movies, but also our nieces and nephews and my kid and my divorce and politics and all kinds of stuff. We talked almost every day.
With you about herself and her relationship with her cowboy.
What was the start of that? I stepped on you.
Did she share a lot with you and herself and what was happening with her and her cowboy at that time?
She did. Like, they would like watch movies in the evening. And so she bought this gigantic TV and speakers, and it was the olden days before Bluetooth. She had these speaker wire just kind of trailing across the living room. And she told me that that she would set the alarm for 30 minutes early every morning so that they could snuggle before she went to work. But then there's other stuff that she didn't tell anybody. And one of the realities is when you are a victim, whether that's of sexual assault or domestic violence or emotional or verbal abuse or technological controlling behavior, there's shame. And when there's shame, there's silence. Because we as a society tend to silence victims, and therefore perpetrators go on and re-perpetrate. And so there were things my sister did tell me.
When did you know that wasn't okay and her relationship was not healthy?
Too late would be the right answer. Remember, my husband left on May 4th, 2002. Exactly 2 months later, the 4th of July, I'm on the phone with Amy, and she's planting flowers at her new little place. And she was baking bread in the bread maker I got her because my sister had cancer. And when my sister had cancer, we came. I mean, she called us, and my brother went down, and my mother went down, and my sister went down. And, you know, so many of us were helping her that she was like, please, nobody come down anymore. And so Amy knew that if she called us, we would come. So that day, she's planting flowers, she's baking bread, and I said to her, so, hey, are you guys going to go to the fireworks? And she said, no, we're going to make our own fireworks. And we laughed, and I said, I love you. And she said, I love you too. And we got off the phone. And 4 days later, my big sister called, and she said that Amy's boss had called her and said that Amy hadn't been to work in 4 days. And that's the first time we went, oh shit. Yep. And so we all, well, first of all, we had hope, obviously, because Amy's car was gone. And if Amy's car is gone, she's on her way to us. She's on her way to me, or mom, or a brother, or, you know, what's the name of her best friend from high school? Maybe we can call that person. And then they found her car. And then they found the note taped to the inside of her desk drawer at work. It was addressed to the Knox County Sheriff's Department, and it said, if I am missing or dead, pick up Ron. And Ron was the live-in boyfriend. And the note listed the debts, it listed arguments, and it included the line, I hope someday to find this and think it's funny. But if not, don't let him get away with it. And the horrifying thing was that it was dated 10 weeks before we found it. So for 10 weeks, she was scared. And for 10 weeks, she didn't tell anybody.
Unbelievable. And at that moment, I'm sure you were just thinking of all the things you didn't do or didn't see and all of those signs. And how were you feeling in this? Obviously devastated. But
Yeah.
it was going through your mind.
Well, so I will say that losing to somebody this way is often very much like losing somebody to suicide, because you are grieving, but you're also feeling guilty. Like, what didn't I see? What could I have asked? You know, was I being so selfish about my own divorce that I didn't ask the right question? Each one of us sits around going, what did I not ask? Why didn't she tell me? But then the other thing is you're actually angry at the person who died because they made a choice that put you in this kind of pain. So that's the swirl that I was feeling at the time. But also at that time, we were still trying to find her. I mean, it took weeks.
And the note became very telling. And it also became the basis for a book that you've written subsequently.
Right. In fact, that line, if I am missing or dead, is the title of this book. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. New York Times bestseller, right? But it's also a London Times bestseller and a Toronto Globe and Mail bestseller. And it's translated into Sri Lankan and Mandarin and Dutch and German because the problem's everywhere. This isn't an American problem. This isn't this religion or this culture or this, socioeconomic class problem. This is everybody. You know that the odds of a woman being physically assaulted by a man in her lifetime are 1 in 4. And that's the ones we know about. And those are the physical abuses. So those are the ones where somebody actually reported getting punched or slapped or kicked or stabbed or shoved or knocked down the stairs. 1 in 4.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah.
And to be
too, some of the statistics that I've heard as well, 1/3 of women who are homicide victims are killed by their intimate partners.
correct.
Unbelievable statistics, and they're not going away.
No, and it's one of the top 3 causes of death among young women. To be clear, 1 in 7 men will also be victims of physical violence. So too often we gender this. And then when we go into the, have you ever heard of the Duluth Power and Control Wheel?
Mm-mm.
It is a physical depiction of the various kinds of abuse. And it includes emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, using male privilege, as in I'm the man in this family and I get to make the decisions. And it goes through all of them because so many people believe that abuse begins when somebody gets punched or slapped. But the truth is, it's escalating, controlling behaviors. You may never get hit and still live in fear.
It's that difference between emotional and physical abuse as well. And how does one know if they are being emotionally abused? When is it enough? How much is enough? I mean, you experienced that as a child from your father, and
Right.
on from there. So how does one know if one should be feeling that at this time or experiencing those feelings? And maybe, I know you've said in the past where, emotional abuse is not a bruise, but it's a scar.
Right. It's not only, people put only in front of emotional abuse. It was only emotional abuse. I can tell you from personal experience that your face will heal faster than the belief that nobody else will ever love you, that you are totally unlovable. It'll take a lifetime to get rid of that garbage, whereas, a broken rib does heal. When I am talking to people live at an event, I'll show a slide that lists various forms of emotional abuse, like belittling and monitoring and, just a whole bunch of insulting and mocking kinds of things that are emotional abuse, including gaslighting, where they get you to believe that your perceptions are inaccurate. Just like my father with, that bath is not hot. You are not hungry. You can get in an adult relationship where you're being negated that way. But when I'm talking about that in an audience, instead of explaining things, I'll just look around the room and I'll make eye contact with people. And I'll say, you're stupid. You're fat. You're ugly. Nobody's ever going to love you. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. If you leave me, I'll kill the dog. I'm not even sure I ever loved you. You're disgusting. And by the time I go through the room, everybody feels like crap. And while they're feeling really bad like that, I will say, none of those left a bruise, did they? But every single one of them left a scar.
So powerful. I think about that too, and the women who are courageous enough to go to a domestic violence shelter, to leave in moments like that when they have had enough, whether it's physical or emotional abuse. And how does one know if one is feeling what you're identifying right there and experiencing those things? How does one know when to take the next step and what that next step is? Do I leave? Do I call a family member? Do I take the kids? Do I take the dog? Do I go? Do I stay and deal with it?
Right.
Do you know enough is enough?
Yeah, you're giving me goosebumps because it's such a challenging thing. But here's step 1. Call your friend. Call your friend and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. Oh, wait, you don't have any friends because the abuser ran everybody off. And they said you can't be friends with that person because they're the gender that you're attracted to, or you can't be friends with that person because they're just a man hater, or you can't be affiliated with your family because we're family now. So if your first reaction is to call a friend and you go, shoot, I don't have a friend, there's your indicator right there.
Mm-hmm.
I also tell people to literally print out the Duluth Power and Control Wheel. Don't just look at it on screen. Print it out, get a highlighter, and mark all of the things that are applicable to your life. And when that paper is heavy with yellow ink, you can't lie to yourself. And also, to be clear, you can reach out to your domestic violence shelter or the National Domestic Violence Hotline, even if you've never been physically assaulted, because they will help you find resources to get out, even if you don't need to be hospitalized. Going to a shelter is such a brave move. It's so hard. People like me don't go to shelters. We go to hotels because we got money, or I don't go into the social service system because I can go to a therapist. Also, cracks me up because people think this happens primarily in poor homes. And in some ways, there is an increase there because of the stress of being poor. But a lot of the reason you think that is because you can hear your neighbor if you're poor. But if you're rich, you live on 1/3 of an acre and nobody can hear the fight. And then you put your makeup on and you go to work the next day and you pretend that nothing happened.
Mm-hmm. There is such a stereotype about that. And it's not true. It's not always true. There can be, as you said, it's not necessarily socioeconomic.
No, nor is it cultural, nor is it religious. Although there are some cultures and some religions that say men are superior to women and women shall always be in a subservient role. And those cultures and religions are not doing us any favors.
No. And let's talk a little bit about financial independence and the fact that so many of these women don't have independence financially. And that whole nugget of I have the money and you don't, therefore you cannot leave, is real.
It's so real.
Mm-hmm.
It's also real that, in our culture, we tend to put the bulk of the family care on the woman, which means it's harder for her to earn as much as the man. And so he's a superior human being because he makes more money, except that that's a really ridiculous measure of value. Isn't the person who created a family the more valuable human being? But you also just see, partner A doesn't come home from work on time to watch the kids. So partner B loses the job and therefore is financially dependent. Or partner B runs up a bunch of debt and partner A has to do things they don't want to do because the family's in debt. Or partner B comes home, throws your car keys into the pond, and now you can't go to work, and now you're financially dependent, which means you're dependent, which means you don't have equal control over your life. People who control the money will control you.
When we talk about things like this with girlfriends or family members and someone shares something like this, how do you know as the friend or the family member when to really step in, to really push for action and to say, I think it's time for you to leave? Like, at what point do you help them to take the next step and perhaps leave?
All right, this is a delicate question. So the first thing you might want to do is bear witness, because the person is being told they're exaggerating, that it didn't really happen, that, where's your sense of humor? And when you say to somebody, let's say they didn't come to you and say, hey, I'm trying to make this decision. You're at a party and you see somebody make a joke that humiliates their partner. If you go up to that partner and say, ouch, that little I got hurt. I mean, it would have hurt me. You are validating their experience, because later they're going to be told, oh, come on, it wasn't that big of a deal. Every time you validate the experience of somebody who's a victim, every time you bear witness, you are de-isolating them. And it's really important for everybody to have a support system around them. So then if somebody comes to you and they're saying this happened and this happened and this happened, a couple of options include, my friend, the Duluth Power and Control Wheel, but also have a journal. Because if this happened Tuesday, but, they said they'd never do it again, and then you see that they did it again on Friday, but they said they'd never do it again, then you've got a record. And it's sometimes easier to see it objectively that way, almost as if you're reading a book, because then you can see it as not your own life. You know, one of the analogies I use is being in an abusive relationship is as if you are walking down a long hallway and 2 days a week, somebody steps out and punches you. But you had 5 good days. You had 5 good days. I mean, you never know what those 2 days will be, but you had 5 good days. And those 5 good days give you hope because you believe those 2 days are never going to happen again. And then, since you ask a broad-based question, I'll just talk some more. When you are talking to somebody and you believe they need to get out, if you believe they need to get out and you tell them get out, you are another person telling them what to do. They are already being told what to do by somebody they love and somebody who knows them really well and somebody who is probably right that they're unlovable and nobody else will ever love them. They'll be alone for the rest of their life. So your word isn't really quite as heavy as that other person's word. But if you go to them and you say, wow, I have faith that you have the wisdom to do what's right for yourself. You're putting it back in them. You're saying to them, you have the power. And then you provide them with resources. Here's a phone number you can call. Here's a place you can go.
Mm-hmm. You know, you had in one of your talks a quote from Harriet Tubman. And I wondered if you could tell our listeners and our viewers that quote, because I found it to be so relevant and so imperative in situations like this.
Right. It's so applicable. Harriet Tubman is attributed with saying, I saved 1,000 slaves. I would have saved 1,000 more if they had known they were slaves. Because when you're in an abusive relationship, you just assume everybody else shouts at each other behind closed doors. Everybody else had a, potted plant thrown at their head or a fist put through the wall right next to their head, and they're just not talking about it. It's like the saying, does a fish see water? When you're in the midst of it, you don't really necessarily see it for what it is. And because it escalates, by the time you get hit, you might well believe you deserve it.
That's what you've been made to believe. Yeah.
Yeah, I know better. I knew better than to tell you not to leave your wet towel on the floor. I knew better than to tell you not to tailgate.
One of the things that keeps coming up, the themes, is shame and guilt. We don't want to expose our family to this. We don't want to bring that publicly to light. So how does one get beyond that? Or is it to the point where it's so physically and emotionally abusive that there is a point of no return and we have to share this? Or how does that work?
One of the things we see is when we reach out to people who are in an abusive relationship, everything you're talking about, like going to a shelter or going to a hotel or going to a therapist or even writing things down, is a change. And they don't know how to do that. They know how to do this. They know how to tiptoe. They know how to not say the wrong thing. They know how to keep themselves and their children from being physically battered most of the time. And that is easier. Like their brain is wired to accept that as normal. What you're asking them to do is scary. It's new, it's scary, it's strange, it's going to require strength. And we need to understand that the reason people stay is because leaving is harder than staying in some cases.
So true. Listen, and oftentimes I know as a YWCA board member, I have seen and heard where people will come in the middle of the night, mothers with their children. The YW does take dogs and pets.
Nice.
Which is wonderful. But it's in the middle of the night. All they have is the clothing on their backs.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing else. And they've escaped a violent situation. And the kids, guess what? They still have to go to school tomorrow morning. They have to get on the bus. They have to get taken to school. And the disruption is unbelievable. So these women, these kids, these families are the most courageous people I have ever seen.
Thank you for saying that, because people who have been in an abusive relationship feel that shame we were talking about. I'm the idiot who allowed this to happen. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who chose this person. But what they don't do is they should be lifted on somebody's shoulders and taken on a parade for the courage and perseverance that it takes to get out. I do want to mention, because of your audience, I just want to make sure we discuss this, is the escape bag. Because if in the midst of an altercation, an argument, a fight, whatever, you're running around trying to pick up, diapers for the kids and your medication and car keys and cash, it's going to escalate. And when you leave is the most dangerous time. So instead, if you make a plan, basically I have spare car keys stashed in this gym bag and I can walk out the door with everything I need, you're going to be far safer than if you're scrambling around trying to do it in the heat of somebody being angry at you.
That is unbelievably great advice in terms of an escape bag, knowing that you have a plan if you ever needed it. It's like the plan B that you need should it escalate. And what a great point that is. And, I keep thinking about you and the pain that you're carrying with you regarding your sister. And this movement that you have had to speak with audiences across the world, to share with them your story, to share with them how they can navigate something like this. So what is the key message point as you go about this incredible work that you would like our audiences and your audiences to really understand the most, and what really propelled you to do what you're doing?
Okay. So obviously what compelled me to do what I'm doing is that I didn't save Amy. And maybe I can save another Amy by being a person who stands up and tells the truth. Normally when I'm working, I have a shirt that says, "We need to talk," because the idea that what happens in the home stays in the home. I got my sister killed. The idea that we have to remain secretive and that the victim should feel shame, that got my sister killed. And if we can talk and tell the truth, look, I'm really strong. I'm really reasonably successful. I have the privilege of saying to people, this happened to me, without shame, because I need the rest of you not to have shame. And if I were somebody you could dismiss, my husband was a doctor and I'm a professional writer. We are successful. We lived on that third of an acre and it happened in our home. So if I can admit it, maybe you can admit it, meaning not you specifically, but somebody in this audience might be looking at themselves and going, I don't deserve this. Yeah.
Hey, the t-shirt that you're wearing, there is no speaking up. Speak, no shame. Speak, right? No shame.
Right, exactly. And one thing I always want people to understand is that the after, okay? So the during is really bad and you don't even know it's bad until you do know it's bad. And then the immediately after is really hard. Your aunts are saying, "Why are you leaving such a kind, good-looking guy?" Your neighbors are saying, "He's never offended me. Let's give him a parade because he coaches Little League." So you're dealing with all that and you're broke and you're scared and your kids are asking a lot of questions and maybe you're wrong. Women go back an average of 7 times. It's that hard to leave.
Didn't realize that was 7 times.
Yeah. But then when you're after, woo-hoo, you wake up in the morning and you don't wonder, how am I going to piss him off today? The garage door opens and you don't worry which version is coming through that door, the loving, wonderful one or the scary, angry, controlling one. You wake up every day just going, I can talk to anybody I want to. I can wear whatever I want to. And it is a glorious feeling. And then when you're fully healed and happy and whole, you can make a choice and maybe start a new relationship in which you are treated with the respect that you deserve.
Because you've certainly seen the relationship that doesn't have any of that.
Correct.
I love that sense of freedom that you're describing. And that really is perhaps to some a motivator to get to the other side.
Yeah. So when you're going through it, it's going to hurt. And you're going to say, I don't know if I can do this. And I just want you to know that there comes a point where it's just great.
I love that. And that gives me and everyone hope when it comes to a topic like domestic violence, sexual abuse, all of those things. So Janine Latus, I could not thank you enough for all of the work that you're doing, for being here with Kristi K's After Hours, and really sharing with our audience the hope that exists for those who have suffered, including family members such as yourself and you in your own personal world. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Kristi, and thanks for the opportunity to reach more people. The more people who think about this, the better off we're all going to be.
You're doing amazing work. And I also wanted to let people know, how can they find you? Tell us about the name of your book and your website, please.
Back to my friend here. This is called If I Am Missing or Dead. And again, the title was written by my sister, which is one of the saddest pieces about the book. And it's available everywhere. And my website is JanineLatus.com. If you Google me, honestly, if you Google me and you can't find me, then you need to work on your Google skills.
You are everywhere, and your messaging is so critical. And I love that you give people steps and actionable items that they can take to really move forward and be courageous as you have been.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks again, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Kristi. Bye-bye.
Thank you to our underwriter, KeyBank. We love you. If you'd like to be a guest on Kristi K's After Hours or have a topic and an expert you'd like to book, reach out to me via email or on LinkedIn at Kristi K. Hoffman or on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Kristi K Media.